Okay, let's look through your report. And first of all, I'm going to show you how to kind of interpret the report, because there's quite a few ways in which it's put together. So there's an overall kind of snapshot. As you remember, we've got the 6 domains that we're kind of looking at. We're looking for the strengths as well as the developmental areas or the gaps. And one of the ways in which we can interpret all the data is by going through each of the domains and looking at the kind of the spider graphs or the circle graphs to indicate what those kind of gaps are. So if you have a look at this one here, which is the leading self snapshot, what you're looking at comparing, is the dark, the current view, versus the lighter blue, which is the where you would like and others would like to see yourself, in the next 12 months. So if you look at this one here as a snapshot, where would you see some of your strengths are?
Respecting others.
Yeah.
And sincere.
Great. So you can see, because they're close together, it's a strength. And where would you see some of your developmental areas, or where there's a bigger gap?
In around practicing self-care and well-being. Yeah.
Great.
Coping well.
Yeah. So we're obviously going to come back to that, because that's obviously a gap. But as you can see, you know how to interpret that kind of that spider graph. So that's one way we can go through all of the 6 domains and have a look at those. And another way that we can kind of get into the detail a little bit more is by looking at the gaps that were identified in your raters. So if you remember, you identified, so on page 5 we're looking at, if you identified your view of each of the line items, then you've got your direct manager, and then you've got your peers. So if you have a look at this one here, which is provides clear feedback, which is part of the leading others domain, you can see you've given yourself quite a large gap, okay, which indicates that's an area that you see you need to develop. But interestingly, your peers see that there's a small gap. So it's just interesting to kind of compare and who's rated what. Make sense? Yeah. And then we can drill down even further and look at the actual rating. Okay, so we can see the numbers. So if we go through to page 11, which is again the leading others domain, and if we look through shares responsibility, you said, remember you had a large gap there. It's because you've given yourself a 3 and you think by next year you'd really like to see yourself at a 5. Whereas if we see your peers, for example, have rated you as 4 and like to see a little bit of a jump to 4.5. So that just gives you a lot more detail. So I don't know if any of those kind of resonate best for you, if you feel like you want to focus on one particular area or not.
I think maybe starting at the snapshots, the circle graphs, kind of gives I'm more of a visual person, so being able to see the visual gaps as a starting point will probably be really helpful.
Go from there. Okay, great. So let's go back then to the first couple of pages. So just to kind of explain to you the report, the first page talks about your top 5 strengths and your top 5 areas to improve. Now that's great, it's there for you, but it's also computer generated. So there might actually be a number of, there might be 10 strengths, of equal strength. So that's important, but we can drill into a lot more detail in the other diagrams. You see over here on the feedback table, you've obviously given yourself feedback. Your direct manager is one of those people, and then you've also got 7 peers that have also filled it in for you. So you've got a good amount of responders, which is great. So you already kind of identified and understood what was going on with the spider graph. This is all of the 6 domains in total, kind of put visually represented together. You identified before the well-being, that's an area to kind of focus on. But let's start a little bit with the strengths, and let's look at a few other strengths that you've kind of noticed. When you look at that snapshot, where's your attention drawn to?
So I guess this one poking out around leading purpose, inspiration and motivation. That's a strength. And I guess in each of the areas there's kind of good things and bad things that I'm noticing. So it's hard to not look straight at the smaller numbers of the gaps. But focusing on strengths, again, integrity is pretty high. And ethical.
And keeping in mind, this is not including your own responses. So this is just of your raters' responses.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is that, you know, people are seeing in your behaviour or the way that you operate that says, oh no, she's, you know, that's a real strength of hers, is that integrity and, you know, that motivation, inspiration within the organisation?
That's a good question. I think because I think I'm a fairly open with what I'm trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff I do is around getting a good job done.
Yeah.
And I make that fairly clear. I guess my intention in what I'm doing is always pretty clear.
Yeah.
I think. And it's for, you know, a good reason. And yeah, I think I follow through, and I think I kind of, if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. And if I don't do something, I'm open to sharing that and kind of coming clean if I haven't finished something or haven't got something done properly or need help with something.
So there's an honesty and there's a comfortable feeling and be able to say, look, I haven't finished that.
Yeah, I think so. Or, you know, this is what I was trying to do with this. I feel like I'm, kind of fairly open in talking about what I'm trying to achieve. So maybe that's what's
showing.
Yeah, and those strengths.
Okay. Yeah. There's some other ones I'm seeing as well, like around, you know, you've got I suppose the strength around change management, you know, being adaptable to change. Is that something that you would agree with?
I think so. I think I'm pretty adaptable, and you know, seeing with some of these, there's not a big gap in those areas, even though some of the numbers are going down a little bit more. But yeah, I would have said I'm creative and, you know, thinking of other ways of doing things, and if things aren't done differently, I'd say I'm pretty adaptable. Yeah.
Great. So it's you know, it's important often when we see things, these kind of 360 tools, we want to go straight to the gaps, you know, and so it is important just to take stock and look at what are those strengths and what are other people seeing in me that I can recognise and continue to do.
Yeah.
So
not just all the bad stuff.
That's right. Yeah. So moving on to the bad stuff. No, moving on to, you know, what you said is, you know, some of the gaps. You mentioned before around the well-being. I suppose that's the one that I wanted to kind of focus in on first. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think it comes around my, you know, a bit of stress and anxiety around doing a good job, wanting to take on everything and say yes to everything and not let people down by not getting things done.
Yeah.
And then that has an impact on me with, you know, taking all that home and feeling that stress about, you know, workload or managing my time better or whatever I need to do to make sure that things are done properly.
Okay. Yeah.
I probably just feel the stress of that sometimes.
Okay. So I want to get things done. I'm really driven. So it's part of that, you know, that relationship with integrity too. I said I'm going to get it done, so I've got to get it done. Yeah. But that leads to a fair bit of stress sometimes as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So leading on to some of the other gaps, as you can see, there's a particular kind of area around the leading others domain.
Yeah.
What do you notice there?
So I can see a big gap in a lot of those areas by the looks of it. Leading others is definitely the one to work on. Developing other people, human resources. I guess that, you know, quality relationships, it's working with others. Maybe I'm very focused on my own stuff and getting my own work done to a high standard, and people can trust me to do that, but maybe working with other people I need to get better at.
Let's drill down into it a little bit more then. Let's go straight to the leading others, because that you'll see now what some of the subdomains or sub-questions are that help explain what it is. So if you have a look at the shares responsibility, I think you even use that word as well. Like, so sharing responsibility, there's a bit of a gap there. So is that in relation to what you were saying before? If you're kind of focused on, I gotta get this done, that might have a cost.
I'm definitely more of the thinking that I know that I can do things at a really high level, and if I if I want something done right, I should do it myself, and no one's going to be able to do it as good as me. So I kind of hold on to and control a lot of things that I want to do, and think that I'll do it the best. So I keep that task to myself rather than offloading or delegating or sharing tasks with other people.
So one of the models that we use and we encourage people to kind of get a grasp on early is a model called the VAR. So it stands for View, Action, Results, and it's actually in your workbook here. I'll just use this one on the section Leading Others, page 69. So as you can see here, it talks about, here's an example of a view. Delegating helps me build my, sorry, that's the wrong one, that's a positive one, but delegating is too hard. It's easier if I just do it myself. And that leads to not delegating, which leads to a particular result, which is always feeling really busy, right? So
exactly me.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's kind of, I'm hearing the kind of connection.
Example.
Yeah. So if you think about a view that you currently have, you didn't use the word delegation, I don't think, but if you think about what you just shared around, I've got to get it done myself, or only I can do it. So the only I can do it, if that's a view, what does that lead you to do?
Take on everything myself.
Yeah.
Not share tasks or responsibilities with other people. Say yes to doing everything.
And the result?
That I'm stressed and burnt out and have too much on my plate, and either not managing expectations or not getting things done, or getting them done outside of work hours, or not feeling on top of things.
So what's the result? What's the result of the impact on other people, though?
So I guess others aren't getting an opportunity to do anything. If I don't share responsibility, then it's taking away an opportunity for other people to get to experience something else or grow and develop in their own role. It's impacting my relationship with other people because I'm feeling stressed and feeling, even at home or if it's at work or at home, I'm not being my best self if I'm constantly saying yes to everything and taking on too much.
Then it becomes a vicious loop, doesn't it? So now I've just blown up at the kids or blown up at the husband or whatever, and then it comes
because
back
I've got too much to do, and then when I get to work the next day, and and I guess then people get used to me saying yes to everything and I'm letting them rely on me, and if I don't like the well-being one, I'll just keep going along with it and saying yes, and that one's getting worse and this one's getting worse because I'm trying to do a good job.
And it's interesting because what also shows up as a gap there is the effectively manages time. And I don't know, when you see that, what's that feel like at an emotive level?
It makes me think, are they not seeing? It makes me think I'm not hiding it well enough.
Okay.
That I should be, that in my head I'm getting things done, but if people are seeing that I'm not effectively managing my time, kind of then makes me think, well, what are they seeing? In my head I'm getting everything done. Are they seeing me chasing my tail or wondering why I'm so stressed and anxious, or that I should be doing things quicker, or I guess it leaves more questions than because I'm not sure why.
So there's a lot of thoughts around, why they feel it. What am I doing that makes them see that behaviour or whatever, or that interpretation? What's the feeling like? Because I imagine for someone who's got high integrity, likes to take on tasks, likes to be able to, show that I've completed these tasks, to then be seen as not managing your time very well. What's that feel like?
A little bit of failure, or a bit of makes me feel a bit defensive, like I need to justify what I'm doing in my day, or probably that, like a bit defensive, a bit like I need to justify my time or something.
So it's an interesting connection to just get. So sometimes when we go, oh well, I've got a thought that's associated with that, so they're not seeing me accurately, or they're not seeing how hard I work, but the feeling is actually I feel like a bit of failure here, or feel a bit hurt by that.
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of defend that. And so they might pick up on that defensiveness, which actually increases the gap even more.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing with views, right, is that this view that you've got of I need to do it myself, actually serves a purpose. It's got a payoff. That's why you keep doing it. So can you connect with what some of the payoffs are of having that view?
Getting praised for doing a good job, knowing that the work is done to a high standard, because I know that I do operate at a pretty high level of getting things done. Being the one that people do ask to do things. I like being the person people come to when they need help with something, or that they need something done well. So it's that reassurance and praise I probably get from doing a good job and getting things done quickly. And
that's pretty intoxicating, isn't it?
Yes.
So it's like, all right, I'm getting the kind of, whether it's an ego hit or it just feels good to feel, okay, I'm getting that value of feeling valued. So that's a pretty big reward, which is why you hold on to it. Now, it's not until people often identify that the costs outweigh the payoff that they'll want to make a shift.
Yeah.
So what are the costs? You mentioned a few. You mentioned, stress. You mentioned, impact on relationships, taking some of that stress home. Any other kind of impacts for you?
I guess it's more just thinking that it's going to get more and more and more of that same thing. If I'm starting to feel a little bit overloaded or a little bit stressed now, if I don't, if I continue the same way, it's probably going to get worse, or it's going to get to some kind of tipping point at some stage I'll try to do something differently, and other people will be affected in a bad way if I don't keep doing what I'm doing.
Okay.
So then I feel like I'm a little bit stuck that things are obviously working for others at the moment too, the way I'm operating. So I sometimes find it hard to connect really with the costs of it.
Sure.
So
because you can keep justifying.
Because I can keep justifying it, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So probably the things that it's gonna get to a point, like health-wise or anxiety-wise, that I'm not happy anymore, and I'm not that I find myself saying the same broken record, like about things being great but then we're busy. And then after a while that doesn't mean, it's like a coping thing just to keep saying it's good. And then rather than thinking, actually I'm not good right now, I'm feeling stressed and this is not okay, and
which is not that authenticity that is required or that you want to be as well. Okay. So challenging you a little bit on this. So one of the things that we with CILCA, what we're aiming to do is obviously bring awareness to some of these kind of gaps, but really identify what the view is, because I could teach you how to delegate. You probably already know, but instead it's around what view do I need to have, or to at least try on, to be able to create a different result that's lasting. Yeah. So if we work backwards and you think about this, like, obviously you don't want to let go of your high achiever, you value people, but you also value getting the task done. So it's not changing you and who you are. But what's a different result that you'd actually really like? And when you think about, the health and the impacts it's had on you, relationships, etc. What's a different result that you'd like to achieve going forward?
Being able to depend on others more, to achieve the same result that I'm trying to get.
Yeah, okay.
Just trying to think of some other strengths around inspiration and motivation and the, around leading purpose, and maybe there's something in communicating why I act in a certain way, and getting others to, it probably just comes down to sharing responsibility more and teaching more than just doing for people.
All right, so what would help you? Like, for me, I kind of hear that and I go, and maybe this is my stuff, but I kind of go, I'm not, if I don't know people very well, I'd find it very difficult to kind of just hand my baby over. So
To trust
think
them,
about a task or something
Yeah.
that's really important to
Yeah.
me, and to know that I could, in my current belief system is I will look after this and make sure it's, great.
Yeah.
But what I know is I need to start, helping others and, trusting in others a little bit more. So I would need to feel something or I don't know, so I need to get something from the other person in order to build that trust. How well do you know the people that you work with?
I think I know them fairly well. We all get along pretty well.
Yeah.
I think I can probably get a bit focused on myself and what I'm doing rather than thinking about others.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, part of just talking to people, or part of sharing responsibilities, or just being more open with what I'm working on, what they're working on, just having more of a dialogue with people, or communicating more maybe would help build that up a little bit more.
And what about even just knowing the skills of other people? Do you feel you know that about other people? Like you said, I know we're all friendly and everything, but do you feel like, I know that person's really good at that, or I see potential in that person if I could just train them a little bit? Or
I probably see the negatives, which sounds really terrible, but I would think of it like, I can't trust that person to do this job because they don't have good attention to detail, or they take too long to do something, so I won't ask it. So I probably see it more in negative, lack of skills rather than what someone's good at, which sounds horrible now that I say it out loud, but that's what would stop me from doing some of these things, from sharing, or from effectively, managing my time differently, or sharing responsibility. So talking with people about that, I just kind of would close off and deal with it myself and build some resentment inside and not handle it.
So you get the connection, and it's great that you and don't beat yourself up, because I think as humans we are programmed to find what's not working rather than what is working. And that's again what justifies us doing the things that we've done. But as you're connecting with the current view, yes, it's got to pay off, but there's also a ton of costs. And so I guess the question is, is this something that you want to shift?
I think it's getting to a point where I need to, now that I'm seeing the correlation between the impact with the fact that I'm not working with others better and the impact it's having on my own health and well-being and ability to cope and being calm under pressure, or my own personal well-being. It's directly linked, and I guess I never really thought of them being linked like that.
Okay, so if the result you want is to have great relationships, working relationships, getting the result, a great result, but by using other resources, seeing the team perhaps. Did I say less stress? I can't remember that. That was probably the first one.
The list.
It would require you doing something differently, which requires a different view. So at the moment, you said my view is I look for what's not working in people. What could be a different view you could try on?
Lots of different things. I can trust my team. Everyone has good qualities and good abilities and capabilities. Spending time to teach people or share my expertise would help them be better at it, rather than me just shutting them off because I don't think they're good at it. Spending time to help develop them in that area, or talk with them about what their strengths are, so I can think more about that rather than pigeonholing people into a negative space. So maybe just talking with them more, I guess, and finding out more and having conversations with them.
So I choose to, view could be I choose to, see, to understand people and find the good qualities in them. Or find the good skills within them. There's this activity guide, which is it's that self-development guide that we talked about earlier, which it's structured in a way that you can do some self-development in between our coaching sessions, or if you're going to choose to do self-directed learning the whole way through, then you can work through the activities as you like. given we've been talking about leading others, if you turn to the leading others section, so there's all broken down into modules, one of the activities that I'd recommend that you look at, which is on page 45, which is all around how well do you know your team.
Yeah.
So it's looking at choosing some people that perhaps your relationship's somewhat small, if that makes sense, So you might get along really well on the surface and, great socially, but do I really know them? Do I know what their background is, what their skills are, what they want to learn, what they want to achieve at work, these are some questions that can help guide you. First, you do it on your own and see if you actually know, but you'll be often quite surprised. You'll go, oh, actually, I have no idea how to fill that in.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of kind of knowing who to focus on and how to build those relationships.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's a good exercise. We can have a look through, and then maybe we talk about that when we catch up next.
Yeah.
Just before we kind of wrap up, I just wanted to just demonstrate or again drill down even more into what you've like who said what.
I'm curious to see in these areas what I thought of my own abilities, because I know some of them are things I probably need to work on, but I guess knowing how my view of it compares to what other people are seeing.
Well, you've said, so what was the one that we said? So self-care, wasn't it? Veraison and health and self-care. So you've actually been a harsher rater on yourself. So remember how you said before, I was like, I'm feeling like a bit of a failure because they're seeing that I'm not coping under pressure. What's interesting, if you've actually rated yourself harsher. So you're actually being somewhat authentic in that. What they're seeing is what you're feeling.
Is what I'm feeling, I'm trying to put on a braver show than obviously I actually am.
Than what you're actually feeling. So it's useful to see that, and that would make sense though, right? Because what you've just been sharing is I'm feeling it. I can it's playing out at home, that pressure,
people picking up on it.
If we look at the leading others, shares responsibility, that's the one that you said I don't do that as well, and you know why? Because of that view. Why would I if I know I can do it really well? And I get praise for it. But your peers, your direct managers picked up on a bit of that. Your peers don't pick up on that so much, so that's interesting. What do you reckon that's about? So your peers haven't really picked up that you're not sharing the responsibility. We could make that mean anything, I suppose, but what do you think?
Probably because they're not, I'm doing everything, so maybe they're happy to have a bit more of a cruisy ride.
Maybe so.
Or they're not realising, again, it's probably the conversation that people don't realise what I'm working on, or, because I'm just doing it all.
Yourself,
they're not realising there's an opportunity maybe that I'm feeling overwhelmed because I know I'm not sharing responsibility. They're not necessarily seeing that as the thing. They're noticing other areas, but maybe they're not aware of what I'm working on. Maybe I am keeping some of it to myself.
Just looking through that now, actually most of the gaps in the leading others are quite small for your peers. So the people that that would kind of indicate what you're just sharing is that because you're kind of keeping it to yourself, they're not really aware of whether you're doing something or not doing something. So it's kind of a bit hidden.
So whereas my manager that's seeing some of the more similar gaps to what I'm seeing.
So would that have something to do with the relationship with your manager, that you're a bit more open with them, or is that, do you think they're picking up on that?
Yeah, probably would be a bit more open when I'm having problems about something. So I would share with my manager if I am feeling a bit stressed or overwhelmed or feeling like I can't get something, I would feel more open with sharing with my manager if I'm having those things. So maybe that's why.
So they understand a little bit more about what you're doing and what your thinking is behind it. And so I guess the and we can drill into that even more over here. You can see exactly what the ratings were, but I'll let you kind of look through that in your own time if that's cool. We're running out of time. What have you taken from what we've talked about? Because we kind of focused in on the kind of leading others section. What was helpful? What came up?
I think that the correlation between working better with others, and the impact that it's having on my own health is probably something that I'd never really linked it. I knew that I was obviously taking on a lot and feeling a bit stressed, and that would be having an impact, but I'd never thought of it in a way of by increasing those relationships and talking more with people, or having a different view about my, delegating or whatever, that would have such a positive impact on in a different area. I just hadn't made that link.
Yeah.
So I think some of those activities and looking at the view that I have around working with other people will be really good to kind of develop that a little bit more and keep working on it.
So I'm going to, hold you firm to this one, because integrity is your big thing, so I can use that to my advantage. What's your commitment? Like, if you think about, you're going through a bit of a coaching process, so what's your commitment to working on you?
So I think it's around spending more time with people to find out their good qualities, not focusing on their bad qualities, but understanding what drives others.
Yeah.
So I know what drives me. I'm open to talking about that.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about the people I'm working with to help foster that in others.
Gotcha.
And I feel like if I, know them better, know more about them in that sense, it might help me if I'm working on something that I do need help and I know them. I can, someone's a great writer, or someone's really organised and loves doing more technical things, and by understanding them more, it's going to help me work with them in a different way, rather than focusing on the negatives and therefore thinking I have to do it all myself.
So my guess is your whole life you've thought a certain way. It might change a little bit here and there. So you've got some kind of pretty firm neural pathways that are already formed around this view that I've got to do it and all that kind of stuff. So it requires kind of a circuit breaker, which is kind of comes back to that kind of mantra or a change in view. So what's a very simple mantra or view that you can just try on over the next week or so? Something around that, getting to know people, or seeing the positives.
Everyone has something to offer.
Great. Everyone has something to offer. And
I need to find out what that is,
Yeah,
and spend time with them to find out what it is.
Great. So everyone's got something to offer, and I've got to spend time with them to find out what that is. So cool. Great. So can I suggest that let's finish off by you writing that statement in your book, and seeing how that goes over the next week or so when we catch up again, and see what impact that's had. So if you turn to that page there, and we'll fill it in.
So this one.
Until then, we're all done.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.